Hi folks, it's Dr. Barry again. I wanted to talk to you about our story today, The Ones Who Walk Away from the Omelas. Now, this is very much a narrator-driven story. A little thing about narrators, let's talk about that for a minute. You have your first-person narrator, who's a witness, who's a part of the story. An example of that is Why I Live at the P.O. by Eudora Welty, or by A&P by John Updike, where Sammy is a witness to the events and part of the action. Then you have the second-person narrator. They use you and can speak directly to the reader. You don't see this used all that often. Occasionally you do, but not that much. There's a third-person narrator who uses pronouns like he, she, they, it. Not involved in the story. These third-person narrators, they can be limited. They can be omniscient. That means they're only aware of some parts of the story, or omniscient meaning they're all-knowing. They have this sort of godlike view of the action. Unreliable, and this is a fun one. This is particularly used to great effect in Eudora Welty's Why I Live at the P.O., where you have reason to question what the narrator says. And over the course of the story Why I Live at the P.O., you begin to figure out that this first-person narrator is quite unreliable, mostly because most of her problems, well, they're caused by herself, right? She's not the victim here. She is her own worst enemy. And finally, Fly on the Wall. The narrator is an observer outside the main action, presents the events in a sort of matter-of-fact way. Now, this is, as I said, a narrator-driven story, The Ones Who Walk Away from Omelas. There are only two other people other than the narrator who speak, and their lines are very brief. We learn very little about the people from what they say. It's a story of utopia. Now, utopia is a Greek word for that place over there that can't exist, right? We have this, even from the ancient of days, we have the sense of this idea of paradise, of a perfect society. We also have the knowledge that it's impossible to make everybody happy. Right? Now, the opposite of that is a dystopia, in which case you can make everyone unhappy except for a very small few. But utopia generally, as a fiction genre, exposes the myth of the perfect paradise. All right. And one of my 102s, I taught a utopia-dystopia course, and I started off with Garden of Eden, which was probably the only utopia that ever existed, but even it fell because of human failing, human dissatisfaction, and of course, the the entrance of evil into the world. Anyway, this is a utopian tale, and we know this because of Le Guin's wording. Now, and let's focus on her narrator, too, a little bit as we're thinking about it. She has kind of a glib tone. The narrator tells us everything we know about this place. The beauty and the luster and the opulence of it. How everybody is happy. But she does, and the narrator, notice she takes into consideration that maybe this is not everybody's idea of utopia. And he says, joyous. How is one to tell about joy? How to describe the citizens of Omelas? They were simple folks, you see. They were not simple folks, you see, though they were happy. But when do we not say the words of cheer much anymore? All smiles have now become archaic. Given a description such as this, one tends to make certain assumptions. Given a description such as this, one tends to look next for a king mounted on a splendid stallion and surrounded by noble knights, or perhaps in a golden litter borne by great muscled slaves. But there was no king. They did not use swords or keep slaves. They were not barbarians. I do not know what the rules or laws of their society, but I suspect they were singularly few, as they did without a monarchy or slaves and slavery. And so they went on without a stock exchange, the advertisement, the secret police, and the bomb. And yet I repeat that these were not simple folk, not dulcet shepherds, not noble savages, bland utopians. They were not less complex than us. The trouble is that we have a bad habit of encouraged by pedants and sophisticates of considering happiness as something rather stupid or plain. Well, only pain is intellectual. Only evil is interesting. And she says it's not that kind of place. And that's true. We tend to be fascinated with darkness. And she says, okay, here's the thing. These people, how do you explain joy? They've gotten to the point where, a smile is a reaction to joy. The speeded up, the uptick of the heart, the expression rising. But there's got to the point that joy is so prevalent, so happy. These people are so blessed that smiles have become archaic. They're just happy all the time. And you can't do that all the time because, well, you smile too long, your face hurts. And, it becomes the kind of thing where it's just, you fall into a resting face because, you're happy all the time. You're not upset. He says, they were not naive and happy children, though their children were in fact happy. They were mature, intelligent, passionate adults whose lives were not wretched. Oh, miracle. But I wish I could describe it better. I wish I could convince you. Omelas sounds in my words like a city of a fairy tale, long ago and far away, once upon a time. Perhaps it would be best if you imagined as your own fancy bids, assuming that will rise to the occasion, for certainly I cannot suit you all. For instance, how about technology? Think that there would be no cars or helicopters and above the streets, and follows from the fact that the people of Omelas were happy people. Happiness is based on a just discrimination of what is necessary, and what is neither necessary nor destructive, and what is destructive. In the middle category, however, that of the unnecessary but destructive, the comfort, luxury, exuberance, etc., that they could perfectly well have central heating, subway trains, washing machines, all kinds of marvelous devices, and not yet invented, floating light sources, fuelless power, a cure for the common cold, or they could have none of that. It doesn't matter, as you like. I incline you to think the people of towns up and down the coast have been coming into Omelas the last days before the festival on very fast little trains and double-decked trams, and that the train station of Omelas is actually the handsomest building in town, though plainer than the magnificent farmers' market. Okay, and she says, okay, so I'm trying to describe it to you, but given that everybody's view of paradise is different, I can't really do that. So let your fancy decide. And she says, if you want to, if you need to for these purposes, throw in an orgy or something like that. Very glib kind of tone. But she says, she's like, let's not get caught up on the details. She says, it's a place of complete opulence and everyone is happy and everyone is, needs are taken care of. There are no drugs, but if there is, consider there's this drug called Drews. It makes you feel great. It's not addictive. It's kind of perfect substance. And says imagine there are temples, but not temples with clergy, right? So essentially there is spirituality. There's belief in a god or gods, but there's no enforcing group to make you feel bad about yourself or your lack of faith or when you do badly. And notice it's almost a little Edenic in a way. She has these smiling naked children riding these horses with out saddles and nothing but a bitless halter. So because a bit hurts the horse's mouth and that makes them stop or go or turn and that kind of thing. But this being paradise, they don't need that. She in fact says that the horses enjoy and embrace their ceremonies, so they're part of it as well, and they have just as much pride in it as the children, right? And so there's this wonderful art festival, and if I can draw your attention to the image of the child playing the flute, and no one compliments, no one says anything, they just enjoy the music, and the child takes no notice of them. And why is that? Well, the child just makes music to make music. It's beautiful because that's what he does. And because everybody's happy, there's no need to compliment. He doesn't need a compliment to be complimented on, and he takes no notice of them. and they enjoy it just because it's beautiful music, right? So here we go. We have this wonderful, this perfect society where everyone is happy, and then it turns. Yeah. And in many respects, this is a kind of a perfect model of society, or at least an indictment of society, right? She says, okay, do you accept that the festival, the city, the joy? No? Then let me describe one more thing. You can almost hear the brake screeching at this point. In the basement under one of the beautiful public buildings of Omelas, or perhaps in the cellar of one of the more spacious private homes, there is a room. It has one locked door and no window. A little light seeps in dustily between the cracks of the boards, second hand from a cobweb window somewhere across the cellar. And in the corner of the little room there are a couple of mops with stiff, clotted, foul-smelling heads, stand near a rusty bucket. And on the floor is dirt, a little damp to the touch, as the cellar usually is, and the room is about 3 paces long and 2 feet wide. A mere broom closet, or disused tool room. And in the room is a child sitting. It could be a girl, it could be a boy, about 6, but actually nearly 10. It's feeble-minded, perhaps it was born defective, or perhaps it has become an imbecile through fear and malnutrition and neglect. It picks at its nose occasionally and fumbles vaguely with its toes or genitals, and it sits hunched in the corner farthest from the bucket and the 2 mops. It is afraid of the mops. It finds them horrible. It shuts its eyes, but it knows the mops are still standing there. And the door is locked, and nobody will come. And the door is always locked, and nobody ever comes, except that sometimes the child who has no understanding of time or interval, sometimes the door rattles terribly and opens, and a person or several people are there. One of them may come in and kick the child to make it stand up. The others never come close, but peer at it with frightened, disgusted eyes. A food bowl and a water jug are hastily filled, and the door locked, and the eyes disappear. The people at the door never say anything, but the child, who has not always lived in the tool room, and can remember sunlight, and its mother's voice sometimes speaks. "I will be good," it says. "Please let me out. I will be good." They never answer the child. It used to scream for help at night, and cry a good deal, but now it only makes a whining "Eha, eha," and speaks less and less often. It is so thin there are no calves to its legs. Its belly protrudes. It lives on half a bowl of cornmeal and the grease a day. It is naked. Its buttocks and thighs are a mass of festered sores as it sits in its own excrement continually. Okay. So here it is. Here's where utopia becomes a dystopia. She says, okay, well, you don't believe all this joy, you don't believe all this happiness. You're perhaps a cynical reader, and good for you for that. All right, well, here's what it takes. Here's another part of the society here that isn't so pretty, that isn't so opulent. Everybody else leads this wonderful, beautiful lifestyle, except for this one child, at some point torn away from its mother and locked in this closet, fed only gruel, and forced to sit in a darkened room. He says, they all know it's there, all the people of Omelas. Some of them have come to see it. Others are content merely to know it is there. They all know that it has to be there. Some of them understand, and some of them do not, but they all understand that their happiness, the beauty of their city, the tenderness of their friendships, the health of their children, the wisdom of their scholars, the skills of their makers, and the abundance of their harvest, and the kindly weathers of the skies depend wholly on this child's abominable misery. Okay, and here the story takes on a sort of magical realism. Well, it already had a fair amount of that with the horses and the children and the opulence of the society. And here we see this child who has to suffer so that everybody else can enjoy paradise. What do we think about that? What does our narrator think about it? well, our narrator, and I'm going to say she because the author is Ursula K. Le Guin. She doesn't really seem to take a side, does she? Yeah. She leaves that to us. Well, us and the ones who walk away. Right? And so the reaction of the characters here is justified. So this is usually explained to children when they're between 8 and 12, whenever they seem capable of understanding. And most of those who come to see the child are young people, though often enough an adult comes, or comes back to see the child. No matter how well the matter has been explained to them, these younger spectators are always shocked and sickened at the sight, as we would be. Right? They feel disgust, which they had thought themselves superior to. They feel anger and outrage, impotence, despite all the explanations they would like to do something for the child. But there's nothing they can do. If the child were brought into the sunlight, out of the vile place, and were cleaned up and fed and comforted, that would be a good thing, but if it were done in that day and hour, all the prosperity and beauty and delight of Omelas would wither and be destroyed. Those are the terms. To exchange all of the goodness and grace of every life in Omelas for that single small improvement, to throw away the happiness of thousands for the chance of the happiness of one, that would be to let guilt into the walls, indeed. Okay, because as she tells us before, one thing that does not exist in Omelas is guilt. Guilt, the driving force that motivates a lot of our actions and our inactions. Right? Guilt is one of those things that we try to stay away from. We try to avoid if possible. It's our moral compass, as it were, or at least the enforcer of the moral compass. And so, to let the residents of Omelas know what it is that that pays for their life, their wonderful paradise, they're shown this. And of course they recoil, most of them. The children, the adults, the ones who actually go to see this child. They're all aware of this, of its existence. And so, because often the young people go home in tears or in a tearless rage when they have seen the child and face the terrible paradox. And it's impossible, right? We have this great society. It's like no place else on earth. Everyone is happy. Everyone is healthy. The weather is beautiful. We create art and technology and wonderful things and add to the collective body of wisdom here. And it's all based on this one kid's suffering. The kid didn't do anything to deserve it. He wasn't a bad child, or she wasn't a bad child, depending. And the implication there is when the child wears out or dies, they replace it with another. And the day that we bring this child out and rescue it, our life will be over as we know it. Right? Now think about that in terms of what she's doing here in terms of the real world. We probably all have iPhones, technological devices like that we carry with us all the time, which are, or other pieces of tech, our clothing, various and sundry things, which are largely manufactured in sweatshops in places like China or Indonesia by children who work long hours so that we here back home can embrace this very opulent lifestyle we've become accustomed to with comfort and luxury. And believe me, compared to the rest of the world, America is a paradise. And so we do good things here. We offer aid to other countries. We create technology. We build things. We contribute to the body of knowledge. We support other nations. And a lot of what we are able to achieve is based on the suffering of others, as is the case with pretty much any society. Now, we could possibly rescue them from them. We could do something to end this, but at the cost of our own prosperity. And what do we do with a situation like that? This is what Le Guin is asking us. This is what Le Guin's narrator is asking us. And the beauty of it is, by having the narrator tell us all these things, having the narrator being the only voice, she puts the responsibility on us to decide. We become these characters that I'm about to tell you about right now. They know that they, like the child, are not free. They know that compassion is They know compassion. It is the existence of the child and the knowledge of its existence that makes possible the nobility of their architecture, the poignancy of their music, the profundity of their science. It is because of the child that they are so gentle with children. They know that if the wretched one were not here, sniveling in the dark, and the other one, the flute player, could not make so joyful music, and the young riders line up in their beauty for the race in the sunlight of the first morning of summer. Now do you believe them? Are they not more credible? But there is one more thing to tell you, and this is quite incredible. At times, one of the adolescent girls or boys who go to see the child does not go home and weep or rage, does not in fact go home at all. Sometimes also a man or woman or much older, falls silent for a day or two, and then leaves home. These people go out into the street and walk down the street alone, and they keep walking. They walk straight out of the city of Omelas. Through the beautiful gates, they keep walking across the farmlands of Omelas. Each one goes alone, youth or girl or man or woman. Night falls. The traveler must pass down a village streets between the houses with yellow-lit windows and on out into the darkness of the fields. Each alone. They go west, north, towards the mountains. They go on. They leave Omelas. They walk ahead in the darkness. They do not come back. The place they go towards is a place even less imaginable to most of us than the city of happiness. I cannot describe it at all. It is possible that it does not exist, but they seem to know where they are going, the ones who walk away from Omelas. Okay. And the power of this story is what the narrator does is proposes to us the question without saying it. Which one are you? Will you be one of the ones to rage and curse and hurt and cry and then eventually accept it? Or will you walk away? A beautiful story and then suddenly an uncomfortable story. You have this opulent society that she says, you know what, I can't really describe it for you. Just throw in what you would have in your own paradise. And then poses this question and first tells us, here's the cost for that, by the way. Here's the bill, and here's who's paying it. And then goes on to say, what would you do? Okay. Powerful, limited omniscient narrator. And she's limited omniscient because she doesn't know where the people who leave Omelas go. Don't know what destination they're headed to, if it even exists. Yeah. Okay. Fantastic little story, only about 4 pages in our textbook, but it packs a wallop. Anyway, so, narrator-driven story, thing to think about here is the narrator, because the narrator is essentially the only voice we hear and the only one we really need. All right. So, focus on that, think about narrators, and try to think of examples, too, of the narrators you've seen. Were they intrusive? Were they overbearing? Did you enjoy them? Did you feel like you're being guided along or manipulated? Were they cold? Or did they sound like a friend? Yeah. All right. So, thanks for your time and attention, and I will see you in the next video.